And now we have just a few minor fixes for D20 Modern's vehicle movement rules. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to The Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lores and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Today we are going to talk about fixing D20 Modern's vehicle movement rules, and the changes discussed here today are fairly minor, but they really, since they affect the foundation of everything that has to do with vehicles, it really ripples forwards and creates some significant amounts of change. But before we get into what exactly I've done here today, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there and hit the subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. List yourself down on that roster of historic alumni. Or if you've already done that, then like the video and share it far and wide to help the channel grow ever more. But now, when it comes to D20 Modern's vehicle rules, we've already discussed a little bit about what makes them so janky, especially when it comes to movement and chase scenes and the like, and the varying kinds of scales with character scale versus vehicle scale, and then the rules just being just so absolute ass, unfortunately. Like, there was more to them than what I had gone into, but this was really the crux of the issue. And to begin with, for the fix, we're going back to the 4 speeds listed before. To begin with, we have alley speed. It's used for safely maneuvering a vehicle in tight spaces, such as alleys and parking garages. And then we go to cruising speed. This is roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of a vehicle's speed, which is about 35 miles an hour or 56 kilometers per hour to 55 miles per hour or 80 kilometers per hour. And this is what's standard to most 4-door cars, give or take roughly. It's not an exact measure, but that's why I specifically list 1/4 to 1/3. Since we're doing away with that 5-foot and 50-foot scale for vehicle movement and chase scenes in particular, especially against competing vehicles, we're going towards a more abstract kind of interpretation of it. It's more useful to know what the vehicle's actual speeds are rather than how many squares of movement they have. So, going to a more specific 1/4 to 1/3 measurement is much more applicable and much more useful. Also, this does not limit us to specifically land-based vehicles, your standard automobiles and the like. This cruising speed can apply towards boats, towards helicopters, planes, any number of other kinds of craft that people may be using to maneuver around, to travel in. And then going from there, we have high speed, which is roughly 1/2 to 2/3 of a vehicle's speed. That's a fairly decent pace, and that's going to get you into a lot of your highway speeds, going about, 70-ish miles per hour, give or take. And then finally we have all out, which is extremely fast, 3/4 to full speed on a vehicle. You're maxing everything out, you're hitting that red line there. Really the only way to get more performance is to either start doing custom work to a vehicle, changing parts and adjusting air intake and putting in different engines to pump out more horsepower and the like, or to start applying magic items or go into a class that just lets you boost speed, like the aforementioned Speed Demon. So that takes care of that, and having these more set numbers, or at least in this case fractions, to measure out what a vehicle's speed is as far as movement goes when a player declares their speed, we can now go on to how this affects the gameplay overall. Moving different speeds will affect your vehicle's defense and drive pilot checks for certain maneuvers. What maneuvers will just kind of depend on what the situation is at hand and what players are exactly looking to do. But a vehicle's base defense will be 10. At a cruising speed, you will get a +2 defense with a -2 penalty to drive checks, such as making sharp turns. If you're trying to hit a standard turn at a 4-way intersection at 50 miles per hour, that's not impossible, but it certainly is going to add some difficulty, especially with the risk of rolling the vehicle. Then at high speed, you get a +4 to your vehicle's defense, but you take a -5 penalty to drive checks, such as if you are trying to quickly weave through multiple objects. If you're doing 80 miles an hour, let's say, and you are just jackknifing back and forth between multiple vehicles, going up onto the curb, dodging around trees, dumpsters, any number of other things that might be in your way, that's a significantly difficult thing to be trying to do. And then we have all out speed, which is going to provide you with a +8 defense, but it will give you a -10 check penalty to your drive checks. Pilots, if you're moving at this speed, likely need to be making fortitude saves to stay conscious if you're going to go with that level of realism, because going Mach 1, 2, 3, the blood flow in your body starts to be affected, and pilots really have to work at trying to keep themselves conscious. And then, of course, we come to the other portion of vehicle movement that just was broken and just made things so difficult to deal with, and that was the vehicle scales, or the scales of movement. Character movement versus vehicle movement, and characters occupying 5-foot squares and moving in increments of 5 feet, and then vehicles moving in 50-foot squares and are able to occupy the same space, whereas if everything's going at character scale, they cannot. I mean, obviously they cannot. They can't occupy a 5-foot space, but all of that was just such a mess. Instead, vehicle chases are best run in the abstract, done with opposing skill rolls and participants declaring speeds, any stunts they may want to attempt, or making relevant skill checks such as drive, pilot, or perception, or any other number of things that might be applicable. Now, stunt checks are performed as part of the drive check, such as if the player wanted to try and drift around a turn and maneuvered around another vehicle doing so. You would assess what that difficulty is, modify it by the speed the player is wanting to go at, and then make the roll from there. Now, there could be other factors, such as roadway conditions. If it's icy out, obviously that adds to the difficulty. If somebody's shooting at them, you can say that added stress affects the overall outcome. Now, simple maneuvers, though, such as turning a corner under normal driving conditions, should be treated as free actions, not some complicated, overly drawn-out skill check. But these are just small ways, like I said, that overall, I think, massively improve how vehicles are run and perform. Certainly there are other rules, such as collision damage. You have different maneuvers like making pit maneuvers and the like, where a person is using a vehicle to try to slip another vehicle out of its normal forward movement and cause it to turn and cause it to, if not wreck, at least force it into a point where it has to stop, or where the driver panics and stops. But all of this comes together and helps to massively improve vehicle movement in so many other areas. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Have I come up with something relatively solid here, or do you think that there are other changes and adjustments that you would make? Go on down and let your thoughts be heard, and let's engage in discussion below. And if you haven't done so already, go on down there and hit the subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den, and be notified the next time we upload more content here to the channel. And also, please remember to like and share the video far and wide for us. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.